Hello and welcome back to another part of Design Your Own Level tutorial. What we'll be doing in today's video is creating these carpets. They look more like just a piece of cloth that's lying on the floor. And there's actually a couple of ways how we can do this. Now, the first way would actually be just to get a texture and then apply something like we'll use Insane Bump inside of GIMP, and then get a height map or a normal map and everything, then just apply it to like a flat surface inside of Unreal Engine 4. But as this is actual geometry, you can see it is actually, it's got sides and everything like that. It's not just a plain flat surface. We're going to go with a different method. Now, this might seem like a very strange method, but just bear with me. With that said, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to jump over to textures.com, and then if we go up, you'll see that I did a search for folds, and I just included everything because I couldn't find anything under seamless, but this isn't really all that bad. We don't require a seamless texture, and I just kind of like look through for the best one. I think I ended up using that one. Let me just see. Yes, so that one over there. And if you click it, I will put this link in the description below. I downloaded the medium-sized texture. Now, I'm not actually going to use this. What you can do, as I said, is you can apply this to a plane inside of Unreal Engine 4, and you can actually get away with it looking okay-ish. But I want to actually modify the geometry. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump over to GIMP. I'm going to open that texture that we downloaded. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the colors. I'm going to desaturate it and just by lightness and click OK. Then I'm going to go back to colors and change the levels. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to decrease the darker levels just so that we get somewhere along the lines of something like this. And then I'm going to click OK. I'm going to hit File, Export As. I'm going to go to our level design folder, create a new folder and call this Carpet Material. And I'm just going to delete that and call it Material Grayscale. And you can save it as a JPEG, whatever you want. I'm just going to save it as JPEG for the moment. Then I'm going to jump into Blender. And then with everything set up as is, I'm going to hit Shift C just to center my view, then Shift A to add a plane. And then I'm going to go over to my modifiers tab. I'm going to add a displace modifier. Then jump over to my textures tab, click New, Open. We're going to go to the carpet material and we're going to open the grayscale. Then I'm going to go back to the modifiers. Then there's two ways on how we can start to add more detail. We can either go to subdivision surface, or we can just go to edit mode and push W and subdivide. I'm going to use this method because I want something along the lines of that, maybe a bit more. There we go, so about 7 levels. And then if you go into object mode, you'll see that it looks like this. So now in our displace modifier, I'm just going to set the mid levels to 0 and then decrease the strength. But now you'll see that even with very low strength, everything that actually is supposed to come out is denting inwards. So that's not a problem. We're going to set our strength to a negative 0.1 value. And we're going to enable smooth shading. And then you'll see that we actually have some geometry. But it's not perfect because we essentially created a grayscale and applied it as if it was a height map. And while it does work to some extent, you can see that that does not work properly unless we subdivide a couple of times more, which I don't want to do. For the purposes of this tutorial, this should be enough. So I'm just going to move this and make sure that it's above my X and Y plane. Then I'm going to go into object mode and hit Shift A and add another plane, and then move that slightly above this one. Maybe not that much. Let's move to somewhere along the lines of that. I'm going to tab to go into edit mode. I'm going to hit subdivide, and I think 5 or 6 levels. I'm going to go with 6 levels. Alright, and then what we're going to do is tab to go into object mode. I'm going to hit the bottom plane. I'm just going to hit apply on the displace modifier. I'm going to go over to physics and enable collision. And I'm not going to change any options. And then I'm going to click on my plane up here. I'm going to enable cloth physics. I'm going to keep it on lever, and that should actually be all. Then let's go into a side view. And then what you can do is you hit Alt A. Alright, it seems that it's not doing anything, so what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to click stop, or just close it up here. Okay, I'm going to move this up slightly more. Let's move it somewhere around about there. I'm going to hit Alt A. There we go, now it works. And now you should start seeing some physics actually play out. And you can let it go a couple of levels, and then I'm going to stop the animation player. I'm just closing it up there. There we go. And the details there should be a little bit better. So what we can actually do is let's just reverse it. Let's enable smooth shading and see what it looks like. Alright, so now you can actually kind of like go through, well, let's see if we can hide the bottom one and then run through it. No, it won't allow me to do that, so let's unhide that. What you kind of want to do is let's just go through the levels one by one until you get what you're looking for. I actually think like the first level should be perfect. It might seem like a very strange way, but the reason why I'm showing this is because you don't have to use this plane that I created at the bottom. You can use something else, like you can create an object over here and on random points and just make the cloth drop. And it should be fine. It all really depends on how you want this to look. So what I'm going to do now is just with my top mesh selected, I think I'm going to use this part. Well, let's just see what the next one looks like. The next one might be a little bit, no, maybe a bit too much because it's actually folding inwards. So I'm just going to do it like that. And then I'm going to just jump over to my modifiers tab, and then you'll see this cloth physics, and I'm just going to apply it. Then I can actually take my bottom one and delete it, and then this should be my final application for my cloth physics, and the one that we're going to end up using. Now, this once again might seem like a little bit of a roundabout way of doing things, but I do believe that the way that we did it, we can add more detail later on. We can get like an idea if we want to sculpt the cloth. We can smooth out edges. There's many different things that we can do with this. We can maybe even, because it's not that high in face count value or triangle count, we can export this directly to Unreal Engine 4 and just use it. But the main reason why I actually showed you how to do the physics was because if we go to the Mirror's Edge video, you'll see that there are cloths later on hanging over the couches. And we're going to do that later on with cloth physics and then export it to Unreal Engine 4. So this was just kind of like a test to show you what you can do with the cloth physics so that we can kind of get an idea of what things are supposed to look like. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is there are two things we can do. We can either duplicate this and then try and decimate it till we get the lower values if we want. But the other thing that I love doing is I Shift-C, center my view, add another plane, make sure that it's level with this one. Let's just see. Right, it's fairly level. And then I like to add a shrink wrap modifier and put the target object, let's call this material bake. And then once again go to your object, set shrink wrap, target, material bake, and then apply to nearest surface. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to subdivide this 4 times, and then from there I'm going to click apply. I'm going to just enable smooth shading, and then I'm going to take the high polygon one and just move it to a different layer. You see you got some very basic details and everything, so it does actually add quite a bit of detail, but that's as much as what we require. And then we want to UV unwrap this, so I'm going to split the view off, go into the UV image editor, create a new image, 2048 by 2048. We're going to call this the carpet underscore material. Click OK. And then I'm going to, because this is just a flat plane, I'm going to go into top view, U to unwrap, project from view with bounds, and then it should actually like fill the entire area. So that's pretty nice. It actually does everything for us properly. Then I'm going to proceed and baking some normal maps. So the other one that we had, I'm going to right click it and move it back to its first layer. Then inside of, sorry, I'm just going to close that one. Inside of object mode, I'm going to select the high polygon one first and then the low polygon one. And then go over to my renders tab, go all the way down where it says bake. You can change that just to normal. Where's it? There we go. So there's a few maps that we're going to bake with this. First of all, the normal map. Let's click bake. And you can see there's our nice folds. We could have tried to smooth things out on the edges a little bit. I think I can increase the bias. And let's try that again. Or the distance. Let's try and increase the distance. Okay, increasing the distance doesn't really help, but it actually, you can see where the errors are. So let's try and increase the bias a little bit more and see if we actually get away with making it higher levels. Okay, it doesn't seem like we're going to win with this one, so what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to select the high polygon mesh. I'm going to move it down, and then I'm going to try again. I'm just going to click bake. So it still gives us like our little corner errors, which we might have to clean up inside of, well, let's see. Which we might have to try and clean up in our image editing program. I'm going to ignore this for now. I'm just going to like go with it. So with that said, that should be our normal map. So I'm going to just quickly save this as. I'm going to use the carpet material. I'm going to call this carpet normal. Save. Then I'm going to select the high polygon and low polygon again. I'm going to actually bake an ambient occlusion for this. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, that didn't actually come out too great. Just want to see why. I'm going to try and move this back up to the level where it was before, and we're going to try and click bake again. Right, it's still not happy, so I'm just going to push down the bias levels and see if that does anything. Not quite, but that looks okay. I'm going to use this, so I'm just going to save this anyway. There we go, and call this carpet AO, ambient occlusion, and then delete that part there, push enter. And then finally I'm actually going to bake a displacement map for it, which we're not going to use right now, but I'm going to bake it anyway, and then just click save and call this displace. There we go. Now taking our high polygon model, and we're just going to move it to another plane again. Just want to give this a proper name, carpet low, and I'm going to just try and center it on a corner here. I think actually that corner might be better. Just so remember that Blender world center is your model's pivot point. We can actually, maybe it would be better to use the center of the model itself, maybe to leave it as is, and the only thing that I'm going to do is then just drag this down slightly. Okay, so that is done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the model, hit File, Export, FBX, and we're going to call this our carpet material. The reason why I'm calling it is because it's carpet / material, not because it is actually a material. Selected objects only, geometries on edge detect, armature, disable leaf bone, and click export. I'm going to jump over to Unreal, and I'm going to go into my models tab. I'm going to click import, and I think I saved it over here. Let's see, carpet material, there we go. Import. We're going to drag it into the world. Actually, that places fairly nicely. And just stack it somewhere over there. And then I'm going to go over to my textures. I'm just going to import. I actually want to start doing some proper naming conventions. I'm going to do carpet, a new folder called carpet. Open that, import. The reason why I'm doing that is because all the materials inside of this, all the textures, will not be used anywhere else, so it would be okay for it to have its own folder. And then under materials, let's create a new material called carpet matte. I'm going to open it, and then go back to the textures, and then drag these ones into the world. Okay, so let's enable our normal map. We can hook up our ambient occlusion, and I'm not going to hook up the height map at the current moment. You can, that's for tessellation, and we haven't enabled tessellation on this. I'm just going to right click and add a parameter, a vector parameter there at the bottom. This is going to be for color, and it's an orangey yellowish color inside of mirror's edge, so let's go somewhere along the lines of there. Might be a bit too much. It's got random colors on it because it actually does have a proper material on it. And then I think I'm going to just use a constant for the roughness, and I want to set this to something like 0.7. I wanted to have some form of shininess, so 0.5. Okay, that looks okay. I'm going to click apply, and then just minimize this. Go over to the materials tab, or actually go into the model. Let's go into the model itself. There we go. And go over to the material, the carpet, use this material, use this asset. Going to click save, and let's see what it looks like. Alright, that looks pretty good, except for the shininess might be a bit too much, and the color seems like way off. Let's go with like a full-on red as the original image that we copied it off of. Let's see what that looks like. And before I go any further, I'm just going to build lighting. Alright, so there it is. But now I noticed that I forgot to do one thing, and that was, if you go into your carpet, remember, this is OpenGL normal map, we have to flip the green channel. There we go. Click save, and let's go back over to our model and see what that looks like. Alright, it is fairly low resolution. We didn't bake off of too high geometry, so for what we ended up doing here, this looks pretty good. So there's another thing that I might want to try is going back into CG textures and maybe actually just looking for a material. If you just type in material. Okay, well now it just like opens all the substance materials that they have. So let's go into carpet. There's one that actually looks pretty good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open that. I'm going to download it. And we're quickly gonna give it a test. So I'm just going to quickly put it into the design folder that we use. Okay, and then I'm going to jump back over to Unreal, and I'm going to click import, and there it is. I didn't give it a proper name, so I'm just going to use it as is. We're just doing this as a test to see. And I'm going to go back into my material. I'm going to bring up the carpet texture. I'm going to hook this up into the color instead of the other one, and it kind of looks terrible. So what I want to do is I'm going to type in texture coordinates. There we go, and I'm going to give this a fairly high value. Let's go 4x4, maybe a bit more. Let's do 6x6, and ultimately we're probably going to set on 8x8. There we go. Click save. And it looks slightly different, but that looks a little bit more like a carpet. Then what we can do is we can try and fool around with its reflection values a little bit more. So back into the material. I'm going to completely ignore that. Let's see what that looks like. If it gives shiny, it still gives shininess. So let's give it a value of roughness of 1. So it's completely matte. Alright, there we go. So many different things that we actually did cover in this at the current moment. I think what you can see now is that on the corners, those normal map bugs that we were getting, it doesn't actually show through. I think there's a first one that I noticed where it actually shows through. I think that's like the only corner where I've actually noticed it so far. Oh, and there we go. But that actually doesn't look like a bug. That looks more like a fold in itself. So with that said, this is this carpet actually done. If you want to, as I said, if you're doing the cloth animation physics inside of Blender, you could have added more spikes onto different areas. I just did this because I wanted to get a fairly decent look to it without having to do too much work. Okay. Only reason why it's doing those dark shadows is because I'm moving it around and I haven't built lighting for it again. So now you can kind of like stack this up in your world wherever you want. We can try and compare it to like the Mirror's Edge one. See, their one is like a completely flat material. And there's the carpet-like material there, which might actually be the same texture again that we used. So there we go. We can fool around with a few things. I can try and quickly do something like this. I'm going to add a lerp. And I'm going to add the main value into there. Feed this into roughness. And then let's feed it into there. And try and push these values. And see how that reacts. Okay, so now you can see that it's actually giving a shine through on different spots. And if we apply that and try and look at it again on our carpet, alright, so it's giving the in-between parts a shine. What you can do is let's do a 1 minus node. And I'm going to feed this into the roughness and then actually, oh, that's the reason I used the red color. Apologies there. Let's try and see again what this would look like if I do it into the roughness. I don't think it's really going to change much. You can look at your texture and then just go into the different color values and then see which one you want to use. Let's look at the blue on its own, the green, the red. Ultimately, I think we're going to go with the blue one. Let's use the blue value quickly and let's see what that looks like. I'm going to ignore the 1 minus node here for now. Okay, that's giving a much more general, so let's go with the green or the red. And that's giving everything in between. So now I'm going to use the 1 minus node. I'm going to feed the green into there and then into the A over there. And now you should see that actually all the little grooves should basically get that those details. So essentially what we did now is we used the green value, which you can actually see all the white parts are emphasizing, but because Unreal is using like the negative values for the roughness, all the darker parts were shining through. So what the 1 minus node does, it essentially inverts those colors. So it turns all the gray and white areas black and all the black areas white. So when you do it like that, and let's just emphasize the strength of this again. Actually, it's supposed to be on 0. Then you'll see everything that shines through. So let's set this back to 0.5. We're going to click Save, jump back over to Unreal. And there we go. We actually now have a fairly nice carpet material that we can use. It looks very decent. This was a much longer tutorial than normal. The main reason for that was just because I was fooling around with different methods on how to do this. I did make a displacement map for it, which will offset geometry depending on how good everything you want it to look, but we're not going to use that. We're going to maybe use that like right at the end of when I'm starting to finish up with this tutorial. So many things learned today. I kind of did go back and forth, but to just give you the basics of it, the reason, once again, why we were using the physics simulation inside of Blender is because we are going to use it later on, and it was a good time and just an easier object to learn this with. Let's see. There we go. There's our little fold. We can always clean that up inside of GIMP itself later. I do just think it was giving folds just because of the way that the model was set up. With that said, this is the end of this tutorial. Leave a like if you liked it. You can leave a dislike if you didn't like it. Leave a comment down below. Please subscribe, and I will see all of you in the next video.